Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Super Soldier Talk. I am James Rink, and I'm here as your guide and host tonight, as usually is, always is. And we have a very special guest. Let's see here. I'm gonna try to pronounce your last name correctly. Randolph Schreiner.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. Very good. All right. I guess I can pat myself on the back for that one. Thank you for joining Randolph and also audience members on here on the backup accounts. I appreciate it all. So, Randolph was born in 1983 in Michigan, and while going to college in Arizona in 2003, he had some paranormal experiences with his friends, including shared UFO encounters. Since then, he lived in 4 different states and has traveled to many different places as an over the road truck driver. About 7 years ago, he took interest in deliverance and healing the unhealable. He listened to Russ Dizdar and Dan Duval. Eventually, this led him to instinctively do soul retrievals for others and eventually himself. He started regaining memories from being in Nacht Waffen as well as a black uniform officer in Project Wolfstänzer service. He also served in World War II or sent back in time, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe you can explain that. He's worked with the Draco Queen as a Mindslave enforcer. I guess we're going to go over that one too. Spent time in Antarctica as well as deep space time journeys. So, welcome to the show, Randolph. How are you
Wow.
today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for letting me come on here and share my story.
Yeah, thank you for opening up today. And we just ask audience members just please be respectful, um, and we can go from there. So, Randolph, is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio?
Yeah, just kind of the bio can very well lead into the a bit of the presentation, but I'm just going to foreshadow saying that like in my presentation I have like slides. It's all AI. It's all AI art. It just seems to be the best way to get things through in a interpretive way. And yeah, like I want to touch a little bit on some of my shared paranormal experiences that I had in college with my classmates. Because for years, those were, I had a lot of question marks in my mind about like what happened, like why did that happen? Going over 'em again and again, like trying to poke the holes and to understand it. And then like lately having these memories come back of SSP, which came back, they started coming back about like a year and a half ago in October, that all of a sudden it started broadening my understanding of what happened back then in a way that made more sense, more around the why, like why did I have these encounters, for example. So there are two, like, try to keep them brief. One morning, or yeah, one morning after being up all night with some of my friends, we were in college. We were being college kids, and we were up all night, and we went up to this basin in Prescott, Arizona, called Copper Basin. If any of you are from that area, you know where that is. And I just saw this big, like, um, off-white colored, what looked like kind of a beach ball, but glowing in the morning sunlight as like a hot air balloon would be. But there was no basket. It wasn't a hot air balloon, but it would just float along with us. So this big orb really followed us up to the top of the basin, and we hung out there for a while. Then we went back across town, and this orb followed us back across town. And 4 people saw it. That we all saw it that morning, and then later in the day, there were two. I didn't see them, but I heard them. F-16 fighter jets like went right over our apartments, which we were by Embry-Riddle Aeronautical College, so there was an airport nearby, but rarely would we have fighter jets, for example. But then around that same time, another night, there was a young woman from my class over that night, and she was sleeping in my roommate's bed that night, and I went to sleep the middle of the night. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, something was happening to my back, my lower spine, jabbing into my lower spine, and it hurt. And I usually sleep on my stomach, turned over, looked over my shoulder, and what I saw, which was reminiscent of what Joseph Powell, I think that's his name, talked about in his abduction experiences, there was this, it felt like I was up on a table. I slept on the floor in college, in my bed on the floor. So I felt higher up, and there was just kind of this dry, misty air and a reddish light in the background. And I look up over my shoulder, and there's this big red light where a forehead would be, kind of like a doctor's, that round thing the doctors would wear. And I started resisting. And the next thing I know, I felt my neck get electrocuted. And next thing I know, I woke up in my bed. So at first I was like, oh, well, that was just a creepy dream. But then the next day, or actually it wasn't the next day, it was probably like a week later, that young woman that was at my house, she's like witty, smart, one of the smartest people I've known in my life. And she said to me, she's like, did you like do something to me that night? And I'm like, no, what do you mean? And she could tell that I wasn't lying. And she's like, well, that night I felt something like happen to my back in the middle of the night. And that for me was really like a confirmation that something paranormal was going on at that time. And then briefly, just to try and keep it in time, there was another night where from my solar plexus, at that time we were reading the book, The Ancient Secrets of the Flower of Life. We were studying those books pretty intently, and I was reading one section when they were talking about, I guess, what they call the Lucifer experiment in that book. I don't know if there's any coordination, but that was the part I was reading, and I just felt this like massive part of my soul being sucked out of my stomach. And I felt like I was dying, and I was very scared, and I reached for my friend, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And that is, I don't know if that, I still don't exactly know what that was, but it was very significant. So anyways, maybe start the presentation. Do I click on the slide thing?
Well, Randolph, did you have any episodes where you might have blacked out, or maybe an altar took over, anything like that?
Well, I do remember a time where I like passed out in the living room, and I just fell over the ottoman, and my friends were laughing at me. So like that was something that happened around that time. I don't remember a time where I like felt like I missed time, and I look back and maybe someone else was acting, so to say. There were definitely more paranormal situations during that time, but it was kind of part and parcel of the things we were into.
All right, let's go ahead and hit this. So we got the Project Wolfstänzer,
Yeah.
reject. So
Yeah.
what can you tell us about this?
So Nacht Waffen reject, I wanted to call it that is because there was, from my memory, there's about a 10-year period of time, maybe 8 to 10-year period of time that I was in a prison cell. And I'll get to that through the presentation of kind of how I think that happened. I think it was a little bit of a ruse of why I was in prison. I don't think I was really in prison for the reason I was told I was. It was like they were looking for a reason to put me in prison. But regardless, I felt like that I wasn't exactly what they wanted, what they hoped for. Project Wolfstänzer, when I was doing original recall, I'd self-meditate myself, and then, or not self-meditate, but hypnotize myself and go down, and then we'll just record. And early on, when I was having memories come back, my higher self said, you're part of Project Wolfstänzer. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means. I was like, Wolf Dancer, like what in the world? And then as time came along, I started to realize, no, it does appear this was a very real project that was, it may not have been named that specifically for other people, but as we go into the presentation, I will describe what some of the elements were of what they were doing with super soldiers through this idea of the project. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell us. So I'm guessing you had so when you were in college is when it began for you. when they took you, probably.
Yeah, that's what it appears. And when I using the length of time that it tends to be, my memory started coming back at about the end of that length of time. They started bleeding through a little bit about 5 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago. You know, time flies. 7 years ago, and I shut it down because I didn't know where to place them, and I really dove back into like religiosity, because I thought it was like deception. And but when I look back at what those memories were, I'm like, yeah, okay, it kind of adds up. And what those memories were is I was working in North Dakota in the oil field, and I just started writing just kind of like free form. And one day I just had this image of like the inside of a tiger tank, a German tiger tank, and it has this like unique kind of like wheel on the right side on a shaft. And I've never seen inside a tiger tank or anything before, and it's kind of peculiar looking. And I had this in this memory, and then I started having all these memories of like doing things in Africa Corps in World War II, and I didn't know where to place it. And I was even working with a therapist at the time, and she was asking me to like go into it more, and I'm like, no, like this stuff is evil, all this stuff. I don't even want to go into it. And then also at the same time too, I was having a little bit of like confusion with like gender identity, and that really freaked me out too. Like it all freaked me out, frankly. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So many questions, but maybe you can share more in your presentation. How
Yeah.
about Project Wolfstänzer? Does that mean dances with wolves, or
Yeah. It means so it would be wolf dancer. Yeah.
okay? And can you tell us what do you think that project is?
In general, what I think it is that they were taking individual souls, doing trauma splits on the soul, and putting the soul in different species and different genders. So there would be a diamonism between the clone bodies that accepted the soul's identity, and the skills and the gift, the skill set of each individual would transfer into the other one, making a stronger super soldier. And I suspect that this is what they were doing around from what I've learned from you, James, about the area of like the Gen 4, Gen 5 era of super soldiers that were still more biological and were not as cyborg based. Because when I was asking like my alter who was coming back, like, why weren't you more cyborged? And he was telling me it's like your body would reject the nanotechnology. They couldn't. That's why it's kind of like a dead end. I was a evolutionary dead end for them because I couldn't accept that technology, and my body would reject it.
So Randolph, so the Ultra Soldiers, the different generation, is that for Nacht Waffen, or is that Mars Defense Force, or Kruger?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I worked for Kruger. I remember Kruger working on me, but I would say that I was part of what would be, for the most part, Nacht Waffen, but a significant period of my time, probably 5 or 6 year period of time, was on Mars, fighting against the Arthurpods.
The what? You mean
The
like
bugs,
okay?
I call them the Arthurpods
Is
now.
that
It's
do they
more
look
dignified.
like a lobster like spider kind of creature?
Um, yeah, there's a variety, a diversity of them. I would honestly, from my memories, the most similar look are the smaller ones in Starship Troopers. There's a small set that was like kind of like a cross between a lobster and a arachnid mantid, and then there were mantids, and then there were large arachnids, and then there's even a bigger diversity than that. Like I have some memories of like large cricket like grasshopper things, but I can't picture seeing them much. But I do remember the swarms of these little ones that had claws. Like, yeah, kind of like that, but not as a little more like harmonic in its shape, in its shaping. Yeah. And they yeah, so that was a lot like the arachnids. That's how I saw them.
And
But they had like just
how
like
big were they?
how big were they? Oh, they were. I think the spiders were probably the size of like this room that I'm in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you
And the
saying?
mantids were a little bigger.
Okay. What were you saying before I interrupted you?
Oh, they had like kind of just like blades, like where they would just push down and crush and like put holes in things. Um, Not the spiders so much, but those smaller bugs. They're actually kind of a species that doesn't exist on Earth, that one type. But they're more of like a they just kind of swarm. They have like a bit of a hive mind where they all travel together and like and they kind of like stampede, like a lot how cattle move. That's really what it is. Yeah, yeah,
You
just
recognize,
shorter snouts. Yeah,
you recognize these guys?
yeah, shorter, just slightly shorter snouts. Yeah. And then, as far as I know, the ones on Mars, they had like lighter skin. I only saw, I only have like one memory so far of fighting against them in like these kind of caverns underneath Mars. They really kept to themselves most of the time. My memory says we were just really tasked to kill the bugs.
Okay. So let's just say if you don't know for sure, but maybe Mars Defense Force embedded as Nacht Waffen, Mars Defense
Yeah.
Force. So
Yeah. Yeah, like my memory is that there was a transition of so I talked to my friend who, like, on Earth, I talked to him, and we were kind of like going through the memories that we've had together. And it seemed like that we came together for about a 2 year, maybe a 1 year to 2 year period of time. At that point, the bugs were no longer really seen as like an existential threat, and it transitioned into what would be considered like Mars Defense Force. Like there was no longer a demand for a full-on assault against the bugs. It was more just became like similar to what we do on Earth. It's that it turns into kind of like a peacekeeping. What do they call it when a nation just takes over another nation and inhabits them? There's not much fighting, but every once in a while there's skirmishes sometimes. That's kind of what seemed like Mars Defense Force was.
oh wow, just occupational force.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where before that it seemed more strategized, specific, and pretty violent, destructive. Yeah.
Right. Well, when the Germans showed up on Mars, all that territory was already claimed, so they had to fight to get their territory. They actually found the areas in the northern hemisphere were more favorable than the equator region, which is has a more mild climate, but because of electrical storms, so it destroyed all their equipment. And but can we let's see here. So typically, a trajectory would be you would start off perhaps maybe as a child, but for you, say a young adult, and then you would be taken to the moon, where you would be put through, given a caseworker, and then given tests, and then determine what program you should be put in. So, do you have any recall of visiting the moon, Lunar Operation
Yeah,
Command?
I remember the like for me, my my memory is like really like it's like an energetic memory that it's like I try to tap into a frequency of a location, and the same with people too. Is that I may not necessarily remember a person's name, for example, but I remember their feel per se. And when I like think about the moon and I think about the feeling that gives me, it's like yes, I remember there it's like there were two or three different bases that I remember being on. One was dark and cold with kind of whitish colored walls, and the metal, they were like metal that was angled like in like this, and the metal was like darkish black. And that was kind of like ribbing. And that's what I think the moon was. But then there was Mars where the walls were much more vertical, and they were more of like actually the color slight they had a little bit more of the earth tones that Mars had, and the light, it wasn't nearly as dark all the time. Still cold, but not as cold. So but then there was I spent a lot of time in this Draco area that I think is somewhere. I don't know if it's on Jupiter or what. I feel like it was like in the solar system, because I remember being on Mars and then I would be hanging out with these Dracos. I'd be on Mars and be hanging out with Dracos again, just like instantaneous. So those are kind of like the three main locations that I remember being at least in our solar system.
Yeah, I was trying to find. So Ashton is he just came on here recently, and but this was from a year ago when he first came on. He described basically how there's basically like a pocket reality where the Draco were occupying this region of space, and yeah, so it's
I did hear that interview, and when you said that, I wondered if that was the location. Because I remember it being like all of a sudden it turned into like a Draco style architecture, and it looks kind of like medieval in a strange way, and they have like these dark statues and stuff and tall doors, and they just have their own unique style set of things, design set that they liked.
so near Jupiter and beyond, time travel points. Yeah, so Sakaar fleet storage, dreadnoughts. So the Sakaar, I mean, that's separate from Nacht Waffen, correct? Right?
Yeah.
They have their own, okay. Because Nacht Waffen has their own
Yeah.
dreadnoughts too.
Yeah, it was kind of my memories of at least the political interrelationship there was that like Nachtwaffen was kind of like forced to follow the Draco's lead. Um, but they tried their it's like they tried to stay separate, but there were just times where the Dracos are like, all right, like we want your specific personnel for the specific thing. It's kind of like it's like this, like you go into, if you're want to deal drugs or something in another neighborhood, it's like there's the prevailing drug dealer there already, and then you are just like, you're like, hey, I want to like get some business, like what type of deal can we make? And they're like, all right, well, you can do this, you can do this, but I want this in exchange. That's a lot what it felt like. If it felt just like some third world criminal, just political negotiation.
All
But
right.
for me specifically, I spent a lot of time with the Dracos. It kind of like, I don't really like it. I like looking in the mirror. I'm like, man, like I didn't want to be a person who spent a lot of time with them.
So Randolph, do you think you were serving in a clone body or your own body that we're
I
here now?
think I think I was in a clone body the whole time.
And do you think they would have had to genetically modify it to include some Draco DNA in order to interface with
Um,
them?
Possibly, I may have, even in this body form, I may have some Draco in me, and I wonder if that was maybe what some of the attraction was for it. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to this. So,
Oh,
all right. Let's maybe go to the. Should we go to the next slide now?
yeah. yeah, it kind of helps flesh it out a little bit. Yeah, so I'll start with just the Draco Queen Mindslave. Is that there are things that I remember as a forming period. I remember being kind of as what we would call like the in World War II, right? There were the young kids who wore the was it Boy Scout uniforms, right? I remember that sort of atmosphere. And I remember a lot of like we would always be fighting each other and killing each other as kids. And like that was expected of us. Um, and then I had two pretty visual memories of them like dropping us off on. It was boys and girls. It was just boys, and the girls were in a different group, and it'd be dropped off on. One was a really wet tropical like planet. It was dark and it just rained the whole time. It wasn't particularly cold, but and I remember we were just like hiding under these leaves on this little island for like 2 days, and they came and picked us up. And then there was another one that was more it was a little warmer. There were like these big boulder rocks, similar to what like Arizona's like, but just more tropical. And there were raptors that came and ate two of the kids. And then the other three of us went and hid in these boulders for 2 days until they came and picked us up. So it's kind of like that. But then there was this transition going from that into like, all right, so let's get you outfitted to be an actual officer or soldier or whatever it may be, whatever your specialty would be. And at that time, that's when I remember being sent with a group of boys to this like Draco Queen, who I think it was on Mars. And we lived in these cages, and we to start with, and we would have to go out and do missions, and it's like it was, I don't know, like it was twisted. It's really twisted. I pretty much became like subservient to her completely, and trying to be sensitive with what I. So I'll share this. I remember when I first got there, we were at that age of like 12 to 14, so we were young teen boys, and we were visited at times by older men. And that turned into being sent out into the nightlife area as these young, starting to mature boys, and attract attention from other guys. And then you go back to their apartments, and then what we were supposed to do is end their lives. And but that wasn't all of it. They wanted us to bring every part of them back to our cage, a little at a time, and not get captured, not get caught or noticed. And then that's how we sustained ourselves. So it was like, that was really messed up. But not to get into that too much, that was kind of the like trauma bonding that was starting to be developed with this Draco Queen. And how I remember her looking, I don't know if one of the slides had her image. Yeah, the
Can you go
next
to the
one.
next slide? Go to the
Yeah,
next.
yeah, yeah. So
We could always go back if we need
so
to.
this is kind of how I remembered her looking, except the AI has more arms, and she wasn't really like purple skinned, and she didn't have quite such a big crest on her head. Like there's like that first indentation on the crest on her head, and I would say that's about where it ended, but she wore a small crown, and she did sit in like not necessarily a throne, but she had like a room and a chair that she sat in. And I pretty much I was her mind slave, for sure. And near the end of my time, when I was starting to, I guess, graduate, I have memories of like looking down at what I was wearing. And that is when I began to be part of the finishing school there. You can read. And I remember seeing the insignias and stuff. And I didn't really know what the rankings were or anything, but I looked at my memories, and then I looked up online what some of the rankings were. And it's kind of disturbing, honestly, to see. And that was when I started, like, I would like run her brothels. And I remember I'd always walk the halls, and I would I don't know, it's a tricky situation. I try my best to always be professional. It's a good way to say it. And try to keep people in line on both sides, whether it was the captives who were there or it was the customers. Um, and then there were times where, like, if even looking at one of my recalls I was writing, I was just reviewing that I wrote down, and that there were even people who would like sell their children, and it would go and like intervene with situations like that because it was seen as competition. And at the same time, too, is also moving people as well. And it in a weird way, it prepared me for like the next steps of like understanding how to work with people, communicate with people, and like kind of get what you wanted with a soft touch. And at the same time, I was like, well, why is it that like I'm this like officered individual here in this situation, but at the same time, there are also a lot of officered customers. And it was really the only congruent way to manage that, of being able to intervene in situations that were getting out of control when a form of rank needed to be pulled. So that's how I interpret it as of now.
Okay, Randolph, I have a lot of questions. So let's start with, could you tell us a little bit about what her purpose was? Like, what was she doing there on Mars? Like,
She's just a businesswoman. That's how I saw it. Is that well, it was a little bit more than that. She first and foremost, she was a businesswoman, but that's actually a really good question. The next thing that I remember about her personality is that she liked to like do what they call like thought experiments. So she would develop some sort of theory about like human nature or the world around her, and then she would like to test it. So she always wanted like to tinker with situations to see what the results were. And I think that in a way was maybe part of why she was in this situation, is that it simply amused her. It was something like entertaining for her.
okay, so she ran basically brothels on
Yeah.
Mars. Okay. Um, all right. And how big is she essentially?
I would say well, I don't necessarily know how tall I was. But she was definitely taller than me. I would guess that she was about like 8 to 10 feet tall. And there were other I'm pretty sure they were all Dracos. That there were other like male Dracos that were also there, that were commonly walking around the halls as well. But they, for the most part, almost acted like they were just protection for her, and not necessarily involved with the everyday business, because most of the customers, frankly, were humans, um, and the people who were in there were mainly all humans. So for the most part, they were just her, subservient to her or working with her.
Oh wow. Okay. Here's some message from Dimitri. Had a vision of her once. Not sure if it's correct, but she had an albino. She looked like an albino T-Rex with flabby breast and
Yeah,
dystophy.
yeah, really
Small
close.
wings.
Yeah. Um, I think I
I think she might have entropy. Small wings on her back. Did you see wings? Red eyes.
um,
Aura?
I never specifically saw wings, but lots of times she would have. I would. That's. Huh. I guess that's something. I don't know. I'll just say I don't know.
What about this comment? Do you think she's associated with Lilith? Lady
Pause. Well, yeah, that's the whole other element of this whole SSP stuff, is like, and I think a lot of people on both sides have perspectives of reality are coming to see. They're like, wait, like, what if all these characters, spiritual characters or archetypal characters and all these religions are characters of extraterrestrials? And if someone emulated that archetype, I would say it would be her. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have one person commenting. I thought she ran the Draco Empire, so she probably didn't run the Draco Empire. If she's on Mars, she would be on Orion Prime.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's like a royal family hierarchy. I could tell that she was very powerful and very influential. And I only had very limited time with her. And a lot of the other time she just wasn't around. But it always seemed like she knew everything. Like there's nothing that she didn't know. And she very well could have been involved with other campaigns that I knew nothing about.
Okay. We have a comment here. Lilith is an Anunnaki. Enlil is a full-blooded Draco Anunnaki, as well as Father Anu. So that's two different people.
So here I had wrote down the description of her. So I said the Draconian Queen wore a crown, had golden eyes with black slits. I said was supremely sexy. Oh goodness. Even considering the horror of the Draconians, her colors were green to black, but would change purple and blue. Was about 7 to 8 feet tall. Hard to tell exactly, not knowing how tall I was. The size of average people were smaller. Yeah. James, did I lose you?
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right.
You're back. Okay.
Yeah, so
right
let's
on.
go. Okay, we have any more comments? Could you disclose the real shape of the planet? Oh, okay, we're not going to go in that one. All right. Okay, so let's see here. I guess we go to this slide. Okay, brothels and enslavement.
Yeah. So these are actually really good AI images of kind of what I pictured. Is that there's all these military individuals, and there were commoners too. It's not that there weren't, but there were clubs that the brass seemed to attend. And there was usually, I remember being like multi levels. So there's usually a main hall area, like on the tables on the outside, and there was the main stages, and there was probably 2 or 3 stories tall, and they were tiered up to the back where the bars and stuff were. And then there were some that were a little bit more flat and like more interpersonal. But then aside from that, usually in each of them, there was a hallway, a wing off to the side that was where like people would go and spend time together. And what I remember is that some of these rooms almost became like living quarters for some of the people who were, let's say, preferred or doing well. But then there was another level that was more like just steel bars and stone walls that were not a good place to be. And that it's kind of bipolar, because on one hand it's like if you're doing good you can live in this better world and condition, but at exactly the same time by doing good it's scarring your soul at the same time. So if anything, what I wanted to say is that I have all these memories of this, and I know that I was like enabling a lot of it, and I don't feel good about it.
Understood. So, what was your particular job or duty?
Yeah, I would say let's call it like a manager. It's probably the best thing: manager, enforcer, and fixer. And would keep the books. I would get payment from those who weren't paying. I would deal with those who were abusing the girls. And then I would do my best to keep the girls functioning. Yeah.
Do you remember any specifics? Maybe what the maybe artwork or um,
Mm.
could you tell
Yeah.
me?
Well, yeah, it was all like very classical, and even like the wall, they would use even like it's strange. It seems silly now when I think about it, but they would have like hardwood paneling and things like that, and like fancy, and like the fabrics were really rich, like Turkish fabrics, kind of like that. And this is in space, like that they would bring all this stuff in just to have this like kind of old world feeling of things in in places with low oxygen. It seemed so German. Just kind of like the quirky silly things that Germans would do. That definitely reminded me of that. But then at the same time, there's a lot of like the neon lights, and when I was reading like Tony Rodriguez's book, and he talked about the nightlife on the Sears colony, I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I remember it. It was very prevalent, like the whole in Amsterdam with the red light district that there is and has been since as long as I've been alive. I think it seems so reminiscent of that.
Oh wow! So were there ET also operating in there too?
Yeah, like now and again, but they would always kind of keep to themselves. I'm trying to like tap into the visions of it. It's like every once in a while you would, but most of the ETs that would be there were like very humanoid like anyways. And in lots of regards, even a lot of the Dracos are quite humanoid like. And they can be. And from my memories, they seem to be great shapeshifters. And they could be amongst you and you don't even know it. But like really like far out looking extraterrestrials, I don't really remember that.
So the Germans didn't look down on that type of activity, interspecies.
Oh, the interspecies aspect. I think they would stick their nose up at it a little bit, but at the same time, they know that they were in like it's a totally new world. So quickly, the things that used to make sense in a closed box, all of a sudden, once that box is open, they're like, no, none of that stuff makes sense anymore. So there was in many regards, the Germans went through a pretty significant ideological change. It just couldn't be stopped, which
Wow.
is a good thing.
Do you have any funny stories or sad stories to share about this time? Anything specific?
Oh yeah. Funny or sad? Well, some of the sad stories is that like there's other people out there who I can't help but have subtle memories of them, and that's sad. And it was a horrible place to be. And as we get further into the presentation, it's like strange as it is, it's like I knew both sides of it.
All right. Well, we got more slides, so let's go ahead and move on.
Okay, yeah, let's jump into World War II real quick. So, my memories were with World War II. So my impression is that I was in the alternative timeline, and my memories is that instead of starting the war with Poland in was it 1943 September 1st. It's actually my birthday, which is peculiar, September 1st, and it was held off. And instead, what happened is, well, two things could have happened. One thing I know that happened is that supplies were stockpiled in warehouses. And what I was particularly working on is I was assigned to Italy, and I was stockpiling. I just remember these long, almost steel factory-like buildings. We were just stockpiling them with wooden boxes of stuff, especially for the African campaign. So to go across the Mediterranean. But the other thing is that I wonder is that my memories are as the SSP, there's a group of us that there was a wall, like we just walked into the wall portal and we came out of wall portal. And I remember I'm pretty sure it was Welwersburg Castle. And I've looked at the castle. I'm trying to find a flat wall in a big room, and I haven't found it yet. But that's where I recall it being. And there was a group of us, and I remember us all coming through, black leather jackets, guys and girls, and we were dispersed to different assignments and locations. And mine happened to be the tank division in Africa. But my friend, he was dispatched to Luftwaffe, and his memories are of flying all over the Mediterranean, conflicts with the B-22 bombers, whatever they are, flying Fortress bombers, and then taking a lot of supplies across to Africa. My final memories were, it's like we won Africa, and then I remember going to the Eastern Front, and I remember being in, I want to say it was like Georgia or Romania. And then the end of my memories from there is that it just had an order that, as far as I know, it's that we won the war. And I ended my life, and that was what we were supposed to do.
So when you say they won the war, does that mean they not only just took out Great Britain and the UK, or did they also take out America too? What do you think?
Well, that in that period of time, it would have just been that essentially Europe was conquered, and that would mean that America was defanged as well.
Interesting. I wonder this alternate timeline. Wonder if maybe the South won the Civil War. It was actually the Confederate States.
Yeah, it very well could have been that. My friend does have the, like I remember fighting the Americans on the ground, but he remembers fighting a lot of the Air Force in the air as well. So it's not well, and if this is a temporal war as well, like there's possibility that there were people sent back to World War II, even on the American side, and I'm just waiting to hear from them.
Oh wow. So next question. So when you say you were sent back in time, from what position or what group were you sent back in time from? Do you have?
I think that I was sent back in time near right after I was with the Draco Queen from on Mars. Yep, because we were all SS level individuals, and we were all like super soldier like individuals with their individual expertise. Yeah, and I remember my trauma twin going there. I remember my battle buddy going there, and one of my alters and a clone was sent there too, as far as I remember so far.
Oh wow. Okay, audience members, anybody have some good questions? Here we go. What does a wall portal look like? What do you think?
Oh, wall portal. Pretty much just like a wall, like just like there's a wall behind you in your room if you're in a room, and at the vertical lines, it just turns into a blue, looks like a blue screen, shimmery screen, and you just walk into it. And there's one on the other side, and you walk out.
Very good.
So is it just a portal disguised as a wall? I would say no. I would say what I recall is that there's like these two pillars, one that goes in each corner, and those two pillars are connected up to wires into a machine. And then the machine is turned on, and the portal will emulate itself. And on the opposite side, that portal will close, but there's no technology on that other side once you go through. So how they line it up, I have no clue. Yeah, that I don't know.
Right. I was trying to find a good. I have a picture, a drawing of it, but so essentially, maybe on the other side of the portal would be perhaps a train station that take you on when they're those maglevs that go at Mach 1.8 or faster. Then from there, those trains can portal to other planets through other wall portals. So, okay.
That would make sense. Yeah. And that would kind of explain why sometimes it seemed like there are time gaps in like, how could I travel somewhere so quickly?
So yeah, so the timeline, yeah, World War II. So there's another timeline where Germany also took over the United States, and it was split in two. The United States, with the eastern seaboard, was called the American Reich, and it was run by ARN, the Aryan Reich. Oh gosh, be careful what kind of words I say, but party, inward. And then the West Coast was controlled by the Japanese Empire. So in this particular timeline, Hitler did not invade the Soviet Union, and additionally, they also embraced the Jews and put their money in their banks. So that's
Yeah, from all that I remember from that timeline that I was in, that very well could have been that timeline, and I just exited the timeline before most of that like fleshed out because my mission was done.
right. Yeah, so the Man in the High Castle, that's really a bad representation because the Germans actually cleaned up the world in that particular timeline. But let's go ahead and move on here. So we got
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so the next part is I remember being on Mars, and that's when things got, I don't know, I would say that's kind of like where I started reaching my stride. I always felt when I've communicated with the mantids now, just like telepathically, and I let them know, I was like, you're the most formidable enemy I ever had. Like they truly were amazing creatures, and how powerful they were for not even having like guns and stuff like that, with how intelligent they were, with how they fought. So my memories are there. Is like I was kind of um I think that they were cloning me out to build a squad of soldiers, and a lot of those guys died, but eventually started to like build a team once they became more successful. It's like there's evolutionary steps of like how the clones were progressing. It's like my early clones weren't very successful, but then the more the clones were developed, the more successful they became, more functional, so to say. And I think that happened for a lot of people. So as strange as it sounds, I think that there's a lot of people that like we were multiple people out there doing different functions, and it seems like there's like a multitude of people, but it's a little bit smaller of a set of people because they're just utilizing our DNA and fracturing off part of our soul and having it run that. Um, and so it soon just started, it was kind of like back and forth with the mantids. This is when I remember just like starting to create, because I was on the ground fighting with them, like necessity is what the mother of invention or something like that. So it started like trying to make things that gave us an upper hand and an advantage to it. And very soon going back to World War II real quick, when I said my battle buddy, and no stolen valor or anything like that, but it's like I just remember this guy who he was flying across Africa, and he was actually married to a female clone, which was one of my alters. I didn't know that. And this stuff is really hard to handle and talk about with your friend. Um, but when he came on the Mars, it's like I never knew him. They like wiped our minds every single time, so we would have like these brand new impressions of each other. But there's that old heartfelt fraternal feeling. And my first memories are as like I was up in the ship in low orbit, and he was coming in with his group. I think he was associated with like Solar Warden in some way, and that the Germans were paying Solar Warden to come in and like, let's see how you guys do. It's kind of like a trial run. And he came in with his guys. I remember watching him do that, but and they did a great job. And then it soon got to like where we were working together. So that's why I had the two guys here walking together. So we just became like best friends out there. But we also started to develop more of our psychic powers. In World War II, we were just working as conventional, like regular soldiers, but there's something about, me and my friend discussed this. It seems like off Earth, there's a difference in our psychic abilities. We can't help but think that there's actually like a stasis containment field on the Earth that mutes our psychic abilities and powers. And that when you get off planet, all of a sudden your powers can be much more magnified. And as we were noticing this, they then wanted to start taking a scientific approach to it. And I went into the lab for that, and I don't know, it didn't really turn out well for the good of others. Yeah, and but quickly with my buddy is that there's one time where he went AWOL, and we set up a search party. We had drop ships looking for him and all these things. We couldn't find him, and then all of a sudden he just showed up out of the blue again, and we're like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Oh, I got lost," or I don't even remember what he said, but he's like, "We're like, oh well, it's good you're back." And I was kind of pissed, and I was a little suspect about it, but he was starting to grow a fraternal feeling for the insects. And this all will come back to the Wolfstänzer program a little bit later. Yeah. So, okay. So some of the tech weapons invention, I'll do that quick. And then, the armor we started with was like pretty primitive. It was like World War II armor, like flak jackets, maybe some plates. And the outfits, like they had to have some sort of because the soil of Mars was, I don't want to say it's acidic, but it's like oxidative reactive. So you have to protect your skin from it. And even you don't even really want to inhale the dirt. It can hurt you. So at first, a lot of it was kind of just like jumpsuits that had a few add-ons to it. But eventually, we started to make, I was really interested in like polymers, making layers, laminates, like super thin plastic, ceramics, and like titanium metal, and gluing them and layering them all together. Actually, I think heat melting them together. But aside from that, that like evolved into the aspect of the power armor. But then after the power armor started getting, it's like there's so many different physiques, like girls, guys who are like more slender. They like the power armor is just like it diminishes their capabilities. So at that point, that's when it's like, wow, we really got to work on customizing armor uniquely for each individual and each of their strengths. So we went down that direction, and then we began to integrate like the heads-up display, shoulder launched like rocket launcher that could be controlled by your heads-up display with a laser, and you could target a location and the rocket would go to it. I think I helped start to develop the plasma cannon. I have rudimentary sketches of it. Those probably won't be released for good reasons if it does actually work. Yeah, so I don't know. I just love that sort of stuff, and I think they took advantage of that out there.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so this is the Ultra Soldier program with the different generations, the Super Soldier, right?
Yeah, that's what I would see it as, is that it was taking an ordinary soldier and pushing them to the max to become a super soldier. Yeah.
Okay, but they were put through clone bodies.
Yeah.
Okay. And
oh yeah, we got killed. The bugs ate us so many times. Yeah.
And do you know what generation of Ultra Soldier that you were?
I want to say 4. Yeah, I want to say 4, maybe 5. And because like if I look at like the iterations, if I look at 1, that's like normal soldier. 2 would be high skilled, really starting to like touch into the psychic abilities. 3 would be starting to like modify the genetic code, especially skeletal and muscular structure. And then I would say 4 and 5 are starting to get to like, all right, let's use science to magnify the psionic powers and the like what precognizance, for example. And that's kind of where I saw myself, is that. But I never really started integrating the cyborg stuff at all. No memories of being a cyborg.
Certainly, they could just wipe your memories after every mission.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, we could go on to this. I mean, it goes all the way up to Gen 11 now. So
Really?
I'm sure
Wow.
they would just keep upgrading us into new bodies, depending if we could accept that particular genetic code,
Yeah.
or cybernetic code. But okay, so shall we hit the next one?
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay.
All right. So then so my buddy and I guess we have memories of implementing pretty crazy psionic abilities on Mars. And at that point, we started becoming a little bit, we were becoming a little bit too big for our britches, so to say. And I think that they decided to split us up. And the last memories I have of I see him on Mars, I fly off, and I remember going onto a capital ship, and they walk me down a hallway, and then they're like, turn right into this room, and I walk into the room, and there's the chair. And I just know that that's where I get blanked. And then for him, a little bit after I left, he was supposed to take over on Mars, and that's when he went full AWOL, and he went and lived with the insects and made an alliance. He found peace with the insects. So the next thing I remember is being sent. I don't know how this works, but my memories are sent back in time to the Lyran War with the Dracos, and we changed the timeline. And how, when I was doing the recall, I was asking, well, what happened originally? And originally it was a long, drawn out war that was considered a draw for the most part, just stagnant, didn't go anywhere. But after the change of the timeline with the Dracos bringing in different alternative forces, maybe some of the SSP individuals, I actually think there were other alien species races there from their expanding empire. And originally what happened is when they attacked the main planet on Lyra, I don't know the name of the planet. It's an Earth-like planet, very large. There's two other planets, that maybe two large moons that go around it, but seem like planets. They brought their whole space fleet out to the Dracos, and it was like a draw. But in my recall is that we attacked the outer moons. The Dracos brought in a Death Star and another ship that's kind of unique, and they blew up one of the moons with their Death Star and destroyed their fleet with their other type of ships. And instead what happened is all the Lyrans, I just remember seeing ships go in like every single direction, just jumping out, and probably 80 to 90 to 100 ships all jumping out in different directions. And that was when the Lyrans exiled, as we know, I guess, in this timeline, and they are living and becoming humanoid species. And as far as I understand, like the Pleiades, I don't know, in many of the other places that they've gone, probably Sirius, probably here, the Atlanteans, eventually coming to Mars, I guess, at one time. So that wasn't actually what I think is the most intriguing thing that I remembered is in the upper right-hand corner, you could see this black cube box thing. And I remember us going with the Dracos, and we went to one of the planets where it appeared that the Lyrans were exiling to. And we got to this planet, and we saw these big black blocks flying out into space and hitting the ships when we were coming in. And eventually we landed, and there were a bunch of lion-like warriors defending this stack of black basalt-looking like stone blocks, very insanely fiercely. And after we overcame them, I think there were there was myself, and there were three other human hybrid super soldiers, and for some reason we were able to manipulate the blocks, and it was a very old ancient technology, and we were able to reassemble it and it turned into this, let's say, a ship, an autonomous ship that has no space inside of it for beings. I saw it as what would be considered a planetary defense weapon, where it could be utilized to build moving walls, for example, or dropped on a city of all these blocks and you can move them again. So, anyways, in short, I remember the Dracos had us take that, brought it out into space. They had us jump it, and then once it was jumped, they put it in a hangar and began to reverse engineer it. And they were using, my memories were that they were using kids to, they would put their they would wire the kids up to the ship, and they would use the kid's brain to map out the ship psychically. They would then take the child's brain and plug it into the AI, and the AI would flash clone the child's brain and use it to then learn how to integrate with the ship itself. And as far as I understand, that the AI eventually was able to learn how to control that and take it over. So, yeah.
Wow, is that what originated with Darkfleet? What is it, about 5,000, 10,000 years ago? Is that
I'm
Darkfleet?
not sure. Can you ask that in a different way, that question?
So it almost seems like these structures are maybe connected to the original builder race
Yeah.
who put planetary protection grids all over the universe. And so I'm guessing maybe this technology maybe became sentient and had its own breakaway, which later became Darkfleet. What do you think? Is
It
that
when you put it that way, it very well adds up, because when I saw this, the Lyrans were able to influence it, and I felt like, because I think I also have a Lyran DNA and even soul history, so that was part of why I was involved, because the Dracos couldn't move it, um, and that they were bringing in us hybrids to be able to do that, and then to actually see it where the AI began to absorb this ship. Like, it was strange. It sounds silly, but like, I remember when I visited the ship in the hangar, it's like the ship was making sounds like saying I'm dying, because it's like a conscious entity. And that's when I knew. I was like, yeah, this is the AI is assuming it, taking it over. And yes, I see it as like being built by the ancient builder race. Yeah. And it was quite common. I wasn't always involved with like like searching out archaeological locations, but I do have memories of being involved with a lot of the archaeological items once they were discovered or found.
Wow, thank you, Randolph. So, can you comment how long ago this was you were sent back in time when this war?
Well, uh, it doesn't make sense in a human perspective, but people say the Lyran War happened like what, like 250 million, a billion years ago. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense. But I remember fighting right alongside the Dracos, and they would always call me. They would always call me their dog. They saw me as like their just war machine. Yeah.
Wow, you think we can maybe go back in time and change it again? But
Yeah.
the butterfly effect
I
might delete
don't.
us from existence.
I like to believe that we don't need to.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Let's get
optimistic.
let's go on here. So, okay, you
Oh,
got
yeah.
next slide.
Yeah, so a little bit after that, this was when, I remember having a relationship with my trauma twin, and for some reason, as far as I remember, and if anyone could tell me why, that the people that were in my group or around me or in that super soldier group, weren't allowed to have intimate relationships, and that so we ended up having an intimate relationship, and I remember seeing her get killed, and I know I was killed and rehomed many times and brutalized. It was really, really torturous, and I thought she was dead. I guess she thought I was dead. It was really a mess, and um, that's when I ended up getting put in jail. As far as I know, I thought that I actually think they just wanted to get rid of me at that point in time because I couldn't progress. I was too influential in my little circle. I was not able to integrate the cyborg tech, so they couldn't really control me anymore. And it was, I don't think they wanted me to get rid of me, but it just wasn't working with me anymore. But when I was in jail, I tried my best to like make things that would help those people who I cared about out there. And there were a couple different inventions I kind of remember making. I don't know if this will just be brief. I don't even think this could be.
Okay, hold on a sec. Let me see if I can just do this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so let's start here. So down here, like you see your ship console, and in the middle, I think it's generally called like an altimeter. I'm not a pilot, so I don't know the name of this thing, but it like tells you, shows you your horizon and your pitch and your, I think your draw or daw, however that's said. And then, but I made something similar that was like made for when you go through a slipstream. And with, I remember, I think I was at Montauk, but I don't have memories of that yet, except one thing. But I remember watching a video about Montauk, and they would talk about when the kids would go through the slipstream to not go down the alternative channels. You always had to stay on the main channel. So I wanted to make a visual device that enabled an individual to watch the slipstream through a technological um, analog visualization. So it would let you know if the ship is balanced or not. And then I'm doing more research even a couple weeks ago. It appears that there is something called gravitational radiation. And I think that is what is seen as visual light in the slipstream is gravitational radiation. So there's sensors, sorry, I'm moving all over. There's sensors outside the ship that will pick this up. And then there's an algorithm that will put it on an XY axis, a calculus axis, and it will tell the ship where to move to stay in the balance of the slipstream. So it kind of is just like a visual cue to help you keep your ship centered in the slipstream and essentially, if anything, avoid turbulence. Even if you wouldn't leave the slipstream, you can like adjust the ship some, and it would actually could easily be integrated in the fly-by-wire on the ship so that the ship's automatic navigation through the slipstream could adjust with it. But this would just be the visual indicator of it. So there's wheels on the outside that would turn the globe like a crystal ball. And then on the out, there's a electromagnetic reactive die that goes inside the ball. And when the algorithm tells the electromagnetics to turn on, it will then light up the area. So it would be like mimicking what's going on outside the ship, but brings it inside. So any of you out there, if you happen to have memories of that, that's something that I remember making.
Oh wow! So so that's for Nacht Waffen, that drawing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you a navigation asset?
No, I wasn't. I remember starting to do like flight simulators for what I think were the Class C capital ships. So those would be like landing, ground. I was really like ground based. They didn't want. I don't. They would compartmentalize us so that we couldn't take everything over, frankly.
So how big is a capital ship?
Man, like the biggest ones, they they're like 2 miles long or something. The one I was in was probably like that I would work out. It was probably like two or three football fields, about that. Yeah, you could have like a
And
battalion on it, and then you could take over a small planet with it. A moon.
on these ships, do they compartmentalize it to the point where you could be on one section and you don't know that there's another section? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe only the upper officers would know.
Yeah, very often, like you could be in the armor, you could be in the barracks and the armory and the hangar deck, and you can maybe go up on the bridge and maybe into the cafeteria, but like unless you get hurt, you're not going to the med bay or anything. And who knows what else is on the ships. There's probably tons of stuff on the ships I had no idea about.
Yeah, so your particular section may think you're the only one on that ship, and you can't really see outside to know that
Yeah.
there's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, it's true.
Ricky, you're asking great questions. What about your uniform? Oh wait, sorry. Okay, did you wear a uniform? What did it look like?
Yeah, so it was like an SS uniform, pretty typical. It had I remember like when I was with the Draco Queen and I remember looking down at myself, I remember seeing the no, it's the olive thing, it's olive leaf, and then gray braids, and I had the skull cap and that stuff, and just belt, slacks, shirt, coat. I didn't really, coat was okay. I generally don't wear the coat much. But when I was on the ships, I thought sometimes I was wearing like a gray uniform, and it wasn't as, it's a little more streamlined. Yeah, it's more like a work uniform. And then other than that, just like fatigues and gear.
Yeah, certainly. And as a super soldier, you probably had one of those skin tight suits, those bio suits. They're black.
Yeah, those started coming in a little bit later. I think that those had to be like start to be developed over time. I don't remember wearing one of those too much except later. Yeah, because I remember like feeling it around my neck. It was like coming around my neck, and it was almost like scale. It was almost felt like scales in a way.
So it
It
would
felt
have like
cool.
little needles. So when you put it on, it'll like kind of pinch you a little bit because it had like this like
Yeah.
nanite,
Hmm.
and it would.
Yeah, it did have like a what felt like, as you describe it like that, it felt kind of like there's like a friction inside, similar to like when you wear a wetsuit, right? But even when you're trying to put on a dry wetsuit, that's that's how I remember that stuff feeling. Yeah.
Okay. So Dimitri's asking if you just see Randy Kramer, or we can maybe even expand it. Did you see anybody else that you recognize in the SS community out there, or even maybe celebrities that were maybe in the?
Yeah, celebrities. Okay. So I will say not with celebrities, but when I've communicated with John Whitbird, I remember John. And then a lot of the things that Joseph Powell was saying, a lot of those things make sense. And I feel like that I knew of him, but we didn't communicate too much. And I've met my trauma twin, and I have on Earth, and I have met my battle buddy, and I communicate with him regularly. And he has more, man, his story's nuts.
Do you think we can? You can ask him, or yeah, if they could maybe perhaps join in, or maybe even do a panel if they're a little nervous to be by themselves
Yeah,
too.
yeah, we can work that out for the future, maybe.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so shall we go ahead and go back to?
Yeah, there aren't too many more. Yeah, there's too many more. I kind of want to make sure that I put the icing on the cake in regards to like this project and what it involves. Yeah, so let me just say, after I remember getting broken out, and this is where it gets a little weird because this starts to feel like it's in the future. And we started doing things in our own way. And this ship here is what we called Calypso. And as far as what I remember, we named it, was it Eldridge in memory of project, or the Philadelphia project. And it was a submarine. I remember just the hull. It was horrible shape, and we retrofitted it into a really amazing ship, and that was our ship for some time. But then there were some other ships that I started kind of having memories of, and I think that's I don't want to say this, but hey, it's almost 2024, that some of these ships came back here from the future. Haven't seen them yet, but I just have memories of a lot of ships coming back that were associated with super soldier individuals and are connected to our consciousnesses by the soul AI. Take that for what you will. No promises, but at least enable it to open your mind some to maybe what we could see in the future.
So you're suggesting there might be a first contact event where ships from our future are coming back in time and they're all going to show up, I guess. A lot of them. Is that what you kind of
Yeah,
going
I like, of course, I don't want to like give anyone like this is what's going to happen. So I have no idea, right? But I'm getting the impression that something like that is possible. And if I think about first contact, like what would be better than first contact with other humans?
Exactly. And so we had Johann Fritz mentioned that there was going to be when the the regressionist put him under and he looked into the future timeline, he said that essentially there's going to be a nuclear war when Hillary Clinton was president, and then the Nacht Waffen's going to wait till we destroy ourselves, and then eventually, I think roughly around 2028 or 2030, they will come down and offer aid, and so basically problem reaction solution, they allow us to destroy ourselves, and then they're going to rebuild society in their image. So but I don't think that's going to happen now. So the timeline has totally changed, and it's going to be kind of interesting how this is going to go. But,
yeah, to me, it seems like that even Nacht Waffen is going through a political reorganization of that's based a little bit more on more like old world principles, or not primitive principles, but more like egalitarian principles, more so than the Prussian principles, which has controlled them for a long time.
okay, so I have a question about this slide. So you say you joined the resistance. Is that basically like the Alpha Squad, or is that something totally different?
That's what I would think, at least by the functions that we were doing. That's what it seemed like. The group of people I was working with, we were trying to help other planets avoid being absorbed by the AI. We were making alliances in other constellations. And my memories were is I was doing a lot of like espionage and I think assassinations. So we were all kind of doing our own things, but we also were trying to make plans and organize things with other individuals who we were in connection with out there.
So Randolph, I guess my question should have been more specifically, what was the name of the organization that you joined that was resistant to AI?
I don't remember.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, let's see here. Let's go through a quick. Sybil is asking, when did you meet John Whitberg? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so he reached out. I think, I don't know, maybe he didn't, but I think he reached out to me on Facebook and we started communicating, and then we chat. And I when he was describing what he was doing, I do have memories of seeing him on the bridge. I had this very specific picture of him on the bridge in the corner doing intelligence work, and I would get intelligence from him. And I have a few memories of I haven't told him this yet, but spending time with him on an Asian Japanese colony so it seemed like that we were friends.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on. Oh wait, here's from Ricky. Did you speak German or English during this time in the program?
I would have spoke German. I don't speak German nearly fluently. I can understand a little bit of it here, but I did have a German class in high school, and I always reckon it seemed impossibly hard to learn. So I don't know what that means, but
All right, sprachen die Deutsch right now. Okay.
ja, sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Okay. Let's just go back to an old question.
Oh, Mindslave.
Yeah.
Mindslave, it's like you become, what is it? You become, uh, it's like when like a narcissistic personality um, so intertwines inside the mind of an individual that that person becomes, let's say, like a puppet. That like there's that saying of like, oh, they get inside your head, or like that it's that sort of thing. Is that they so know like how you'll think, what you'll do, and they have an alternate. They have like a pathway to lead you in the direction that they want you to do. And that's pretty much what it means, is that your mind, you just become mind controlled. Yeah. So I was like the Draco Queen's puppet, pretty much. No longer, thank God. But
Oh wow. Well, thanks for sharing. So many more questions, but we'll just, because we still have more slides, maybe we should go to the next slide before we do any more questions.
oh yeah, I want to talk about Erica. So Erica is it took I didn't know this till about 4 months, 3 or 4 months ago. Is Erica was a I guess they cloned me into a female. I don't know how they do that, but they did. I guess guys have an X and a Y chromosome, so theoretically, I guess they could take an X and an X. Or anyways, they cloned her to be like a beta sex slave and performer, and I never knew it all the time that I was out there. As I would go by Randolph out there. I think my name was Durand. And there were times where I would interact with her and I never even knew. I actually took her to the brothel when she was 12, and I picked her up from a geisha training. Like a woman was training her as a geisha, and she lived at this small, I think it was on a German colony, and it was this little Japanese garden, and she was raising young girls and training them to be geishas. And I took her to the brothel, and but in no idea that we were the same soul in an alter's body, or we were alters in two different bodies, but there's always this strange um, soul connection that words cannot express. So they also took her, and she was marrying to my friend in World War II, who I speak to today, and he remembers her. And he would tell me about her before I even knew that she was my alter. But this brings it back to the program Wolfstänzer. So when I was first doing like myself, I was doing sorry, I'm getting blocked. So I was doing my doing hypnosis on myself, and I would come through with this recall. I remember hearing like Wolfstänzer. I was like, what is this? This was like really early on, a year and a half ago. And then 3 months ago, I was doing a soul journey, and I found her like in stasis inside this, just hovering in this room. And I was able to like grab her, like I say, like reintegrate her soul, pretty much like take her memories, how, as far as I understand, take her memories, take her consciousness, and put it into myself. So I realize it. And then she starts telling me what she did and who she was, and that she was this dancer and all these things. And it just clicked just like that. I was like, that's it. The Wolfstänzer. So like her art became my art, but in a martial way. My friend, he was split into a mantid. His consciousness was put into a mantid, and it was actually the mantid that he found on Mars. And we were actually hunting her because she broke out of the lab, and he was assigned to kill her, and he let her go. And it drastically changed even where we are here today. And I would suspect that there were many other SSP people. It's not like they're just like taking cards and throwing them out on the table in random. And like they're like, oh, you're this alter, you're in this body, you're in this. It's like, no, they are they're strategically utilizing your alters in different dynamic situations without even letting you know you're the same soul, and traumatizing people sequentially, and at the same time also bonding you to a trauma twin to keep you blind from the fact that your true love is kind of your own soul. And if we're in, I suspect that many of us are angelics, or we have a long history in our souls, that it kind of makes perfect sense that they would want us to be blind from who we actually are, and as a way to keep us busy from really being able to emanate like what and who we are. So yeah, it's a little bit of a tangent, but a couple more memories. So memories of World War II. So her and my friend, I won't say his name yet, he they had 3 kids, and they hid in the mountains of Bavaria, and they were supposed to come back, as far as I know. And in memories of an extraction team coming in and killing them all. And then later, the memories of being brought to the Draco Queen, leased her, I guess you could say that, to 2 brothers, and they were like her handlers, and they took her to a Japanese colony where she worked as a performer, and that's where she actually really liked the Japanese colony. It's very beautiful.
Was she Japanese looking?
A little bit, but just feminine looking, you know.
Okay.
Which is kind of Japanese looking, yeah.
Well, this is God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Genoa.
Hmm.
About 8% of my soul is feminine, so they meant
Oh,
they could.
so this has happened to you too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Genoa. So yeah. Anyway, I don't really
Yeah.
want to talk about that right now.
No, that's okay. I feel you.
We'll go on.
It's really tough. It's really tough for all of us. Like, this has been like, I actually came out and told my dad that I have all these memories yesterday for the very first time, and I didn't want to say it, but it's very hard on the soul. And especially if you're a person who doesn't have a solid paper trail. Like, I don't have a solid paper trail. I really just rest upon those who do, who have that paper trail, and they're saying the same thing and comparing the same thing. And all I can do is share my story. So like, maybe one day, either we'll all find out that we have a shared delusion and we'll all share the same ward, or we'll find that, like, no, like, all this stuff happened. And that's what I hope for. So that's the only thing that will heal us. All right. Oh, and James, if I go too long, just let me know. I'm fine, just
Well, I
chilling
think
for now.
what is this? So we only have one more slide after this. So
I
yeah.
think so, yeah. I was trying to, I may go to, I'll just read through this real quick. So when I was in hypnosis, I just really rapidly, I just like named off all these things that I remember making, and I just wrote them down. So a modified Luger at a higher caliber, larger caliber, and larger clip size, heavier weight, more balanced. And I tried to draw it a couple days ago. It's close. Armor development, I talked about that a little bit. And then advanced remending fabrics. And then additionally, what we were using is the spider web on Mars was really a really strong fabric, similar to Kevlar, but flexible and bendable. And we were working using that. A lot of this was collaborative. Let's be honest. A lot of this was collaborative with other scientists, but we're sharing ideas. Stasis shielding, no idea how that one works.
Wait, hold on a second. So how did they actually get the spider web? Did they send slaves down there and harvest it, or they just?
Well, I think we were kind of killing a fair amount of them, and there would be caves. They wouldn't like build these big, from what I'm remembering now, they wouldn't build these big like webs. They would just kind of surround their caves with them and make kind of like tunnels inside the tunnels Or say if there was a bigger cavern, for example, they would make like smaller tunnels that would traverse through the cavern in different angles. And with that, like we would just cut it, and then there was a way that they could like stretch it out. And I think lots of times it, like just like with wool, you like spin it up on a wheel. That was a similar thing. They would just spin it up on a wheel. And for some reason, I think that you could almost like grab one end, and if you had enough torque, you could slowly pull it all out. Like it would all come together out of the cave. So that just, since you asked that, that's what came to me.
Oh wow! All right, let's go on. So we got super soldier.
Oh yeah, that was a dark period. That's a dark spot. Okay, so I want to talk about the plasma.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Plasma
the cannons. What I remember, the key thing is you take a no, I think it's a noble gas. Been a while since chemistry, but either helium or xenon, and it is sealed inside a iron, like like a medical or medicine capsule that the two sides go together. Yeah, the powder inside, so it's similar, but it was like a metal capsule, and that was the core for it. So the cool thing about it is they wouldn't ignite if they weren't spun up by the electromagnetic drive. So they were very stable in compared to regular armaments, especially large caliber armaments that can explode on impact. Or being attacked by something, for example. So the plasma cutting flare was similar, but it was in like a staff. It was like a small staff, and it would have like 2 or 3 charges. And it was kind of like a rudimentary lightsaber. And you could just like turn it on and lop off a leg or cut off someone's arm or something. Okay, super soldier psychic enhancement. So it was clear and noticed that people had natural psychic abilities, and some had more than others, and some had less than others. And because of that, they wanted to approach it more from a scientific level. I have memories of working with Mengele, from when I see his pictures now, and working with Grace in a lab. And we were taking a lot of, and when I look back at college, what I studied in college here on Earth was I had a fascination with invertebrates because of their nervous system. And when I look, I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of a strange connection. But mainly, my motivator was how can you create psychic connections to operate machines? That wasn't, well, that was a perk to them, but for the most part, they used it in a negative way because they also found, well, this is what I think was part of the power of this, from my perspective, that part of the secret of the super soldier programs is that like we know that when we're in a life or death situation, we will exhibit unordinary superhuman powers. The classical story is when a mom picks the car off her kid or something like that, right? So it's similar, but what they would do is could take a clone that may even been genetically modified to be super sensitive and psychologically have a high psychic amplitude and even energy stored. Like there is such a thing as having like the ability to store psychic energy, and they would keep that clone remote in, let's say, a facility wired up to a bed, and they would then watch what super soldiers were doing out on the field, and they would read the schematics that the super soldiers were giving back through their suits, and they would notice, oh, this individual is exhibiting higher stress or higher injury. So what they could do is they could take the clone that's in the facility, and for example, if they wanted that super soldier to exhibit more psychic power than they normally would due to the situation, they will traumatize the clone in the facility, and that psychic power could bleed through the wormhole towards us, and then we would magnify that psychic energy. That is how I understood it, but it also turned into, And when I look at the correlation between people that are targeted remotely in today's time and world, many targeted individuals, it appears that they're using possibly something similar, that they're traumatizing clones in remote locations, and that is bleeding through to us and hurting us. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. I totally resonate with that. Like, you would go through a portal, do a mission, and the portal would close, and your arm gets cut in half, and then the bad guys would torture, clone that. They could do that. Also, they have something called an inflammationer, which is someone that is assigned to the super soldier asset that is has a lot of psionic abilities, and they would transmit data and information, and also vice versa back from the facility. So maybe this inflammationer, they
that
also
makes sense.
tasked with the clone, but yeah. So typically, I mean, if you have these psionic abilities, you're almost like an angelic to begin with. So you're probably not going to be an evil person, but yeah.
Well, they do everything to turn good creatures into bad. And there's bad creature. The funny thing is like we were turning good creatures to bad. It's the cycle of abuse, right? And it's the question is, are we able to end it with ourselves? But yeah, so there was the neat thing about the psychic enhancement program though was this ability for us to be able to psychically connect our consciousnesses to ships. That, like, to me, that is something good that came out of it, but some people just decided to use it in a bad way.
Okay, thank you. All right, so go ahead. We've got two
I
more.
guess I'll just finish these. So yeah, I also remember like helping design a ground attack transport hover ship that it was I remember there were drop ships that we would come down on, like, clearly, but then there were also these smaller ships that were more like an armored personnel carrier that would hover off the ground, and they could fly but just not like super far distances. And I remember them being a little bit clunky, but they could like climb, they could like fly up on top of like hillsides and like provide cover fire. And another thing they could do is, my memories is that the turret would also go under the ship. So I think that the ship would actually flip over. That's how I think it goes right now. And it would cover fire support from above us downward. But then eventually also what would happen is if there was an individual that was wounded, it would they would almost automatically go down, grab the person, evac them, and take them right back up to the capital ship that was in the inner atmosphere or the outer atmosphere of the planet. And then, yeah, so the ship navigation, I show that one image. Radio communication, I was trying to create as strange as this sounds, a radio that could hear source, could hear the sound of source, and that simultaneously, I think, could operate as a protective psychic bubble, which essentially, because what was happening is the upper brass hated that they couldn't control their living space. Like, they couldn't control if a Draco just portaled into their office, and that drove them nuts. So to them, like, to have a tool that would actually create like a buffer where nothing can portal in a way, making a little miniature time bubble, like, was very desired by them and their wives too. And yeah, one thing I wanted to say, like, real quickly is I remember that when I was in jail, what would happen is I would have to like draw out what I wanted to make, and then they would give me like one little piece. They would let me work on one little piece at a time, but they would never give me like everything. And I would just have to like build it piece by piece at my desk and then send it back to them. That was kind of a unique thing, that they made sure I wasn't making something that would get me out. So let me just finish with this trauma bonding. I talked about it a little bit at the start, but I think that this is important, not because it's a really big deal, but I know that people are aware that there's like trauma bonds. And I've met my trauma twin, and it's there's a lot of pain between me that I've caused for her, and the pain that she's caused for me. And it's sad because I think a lot of us come back and we're like, oh, like we need to find our trauma twin or something like that to find our twin flame. Okay, I'm not I don't know if your trauma bond is your twin flame or not. It's possible that you could have cover memories that you are a twin flame. And my argument is that the reason they could be doing this is because they don't want you to discover that your male or female aspect of your angelic nature was actually put into another clone and split off from you. Because I believe that every human being, whether we want to believe it or not, is whole and complete within themselves. The question is, are we able to recognize that within ourselves? And on the bottom, like, I just noticed that the shape of it is kind of like Sigil of Lucifer. I won't really worry about that much. But I can't help but notice that there is a bit of like this mythological like resonance with what they're doing, and it kind of comes across as like in a way the Adam and Eve thing, because what like Eve was what made out of the rib of Adam. So here we are, like our DNA is being put into the male and female aspect, and then Adam and Eve also had children, right? Cain and Abel, I think. So then it's like, so what is this about? Is this like some sort of, is this a way for them to take like one soul and make a trinity in some sort? And I had like one recall where I came to find out that Erica and Randolph, my alters in space, had a child unbeknownst to both of them. And Erica didn't remember, but she remembered that they came and took her child from them, and or from her. And when we recovered the soul of the child said that, well, actually the Dracos used our soul as an energy source for their drive on their ship. So it's just, don't take anything I say for verbatim or anything, but I'm just trying to provide puzzle pieces that maybe someday more people have more puzzle pieces and be like, yeah, like that adds up. All I'm saying is with your trauma twins, just be careful.
Oh wow!
And that's all I got.
So the offspring could potentially be possessed.
It kind of seems a bit like that, at least if we look at the biblical perspective, and not even from a religious perspective, just the biblical perspective of like how like there is kind of that inference that the serpent slept with Eve, and then Adam slept with Eve, and they had Cain and Abel. And it seems like, and then that is what the seed of the serpent, right? So it's kind of there is a bit of that inference. So it's like if you are having a child with your trauma twin, like I don't know, like is it could be coming across as it may want to appear that it's a good thing you're doing this, but in actuality, that may have been their plan the whole time, that they actually want that to happen. So just be careful. That's all I'm saying.
So Daryl James has mentioned that the honeypots from the brothels, the children would be utilized for adrenochrome. So
Yeah,
it's
see that.
Fortunate cycle
Yeah,
here.
my memory is like there was a separate team that would, like when they found out that a girl was pregnant or something, there was a separate group of people that would come in, and it was very hush hush, and it was almost would happen under the cover of night. And even just saying from the experience of my alter, it's like she didn't even remember it. Like it wasn't until she like broke through the blanking of it, and then it was quite shocking for her. She hadn't even processed the pain of it until having that memory come back.
Okay,
So it probably happened to many.
Let's go to the last bit of comments here and we'll wrap this up. So Ricky commented, so torture clone to give the other clone more energy, that cannot be good for karma.
No, I don't think so. I don't know what will happen to people who find pleasure in this sort of thing, especially of their free will. That is, I don't know. It's a different type of being than I am.
So what we have here is essentially the upper level officers are infected with black goo.
So they're operated through the AI.
Yeah, so they've lost their connection with humanity or their soul aspect.
Unfortunate.
So is there really karma involved? I mean,
yeah. But, yeah, are they free agents? No. Technically, no. They're operating based upon what the AI is telling it to do, and that's just it's just calculations.
Nancy was asking what was the type of grays in the other previous slide. Maybe we could let's just go back to that one. Can you go
yeah,
back?
that's a good question. I'm not great with like all the species. Did I go too far?
Yeah, you went. It was just the last slide. Yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah, that one. I would say that they were what people consider the tall grays. They're probably 6 or 7 feet tall, very, very intelligent, and they're always observing you. Like when they're always looking at you, observing you. So I would consider that my biggest. Yeah, I would say I don't know. I want to know the exact species. It's tough doing the correlation between like being out there and remembering what they are and then remembering them here.
Yeah, well, I think they're the Matra.
Cop out.
Okay.
The Matra.
Yeah. Okay. Did Randolph ever see any canine beings or something that we would call a dog man?
Yeah, they weren't quite as. I think the dog. Okay, a lot of the cryptids, aside from the Sasquatch, okay, and maybe the Mothman, I think a lot of them are what are they called when they used to make them, and like they talk about in the Roman times, or not necessarily hybrids, but there's another name for it. But I think
breeds.
Yeah, I think that they're made in labs. My theory is that they're made in labs by the Cabal to be released on Earth to Chimera to terrify us, to terrify humanity and make them lose their minds. That's my opinion on, say, the Dogmen, for example. But there are canines that look much more humanoid, and I remember them, and they're great. They're great.
Yeah, I had one guy reach out to me. He said that they would take a human body and cut the head off and put a dog head, and they wanted to make of course, they would wear a helmet so you wouldn't really know it was a dog man. Well, whatever. I don't even call it dog man. But he particularly remembers the dog food. So even though he's still got a human aspect, oh gosh, these people are just really gross. Okay. All right.
I'm not
Did you ever come across Johann Fritz?
Yeah. If I'm thinking of the right person, yeah. He was, yeah. Is Johann who worked for Wagner or Werner? I forget how to say it, but yeah, I think so. Yeah. I believe if I remember right, Johann was who was sent back in World War II to retrieve my friend and Erica, and then I always remember him like I don't know, he would always taunt me. I always remember that, always making sure that I knew that like there was someone watching me. That's what I remember. But okay, I forgive him.
Well, I probably have a picture of Johann somewhere, but yeah, we'll just move on. Okay, go look it up later. All right, do the mantids use weapons
or just psychic powers and intelligence?
All right.
And what appears to be magic, but it's just natural illusion. They use illusion. Like they're very sophisticated and like what do I mean by illusion? It's not like David Copper. Well, it is. Yeah, it's like David Copperfield like stuff. It's like it makes you think that something is a certain way, but it actually isn't. It's another way, and that's what they would do a lot.
Did your memories first begin as lucid dreams and visual triggers, like seeing snakes or something like
Hmm. Yeah, I did have some pretty significant dreams of seeing massive like anacondas and stuff trying to eat me. That was a bit ago though. A lot of my memories came back was going through like soul retrieval and finding these pieces, which I've seen heal a lot of people from the impossible situations, and and it, I never suspected it until I started helping someone else, and I saw that they had these. I was like, "What's this dark fleet like stuff in these memories and these visions that I'm seeing, helping them soul retrieve?" That was like really my first intro to the reality of Darkfleet. I thought it was kind of like hokey, but then all of a sudden I started noticing it within myself, and that's when things started coming through.
All right. So that's the last question there.
Okay. Yeah.
Just go quick. Oh, we had some more coming. Okay, so here's a comment from Drama. Thank you, appreciate it. Dimitri is saying the Greys are wicked as
Yeah.
AF. So I
Yeah.
would say, there's what 19 species of Greys, so it wouldn't be really
For
fair.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
like saying, well, maybe humans are wicked because look at how our own humanity, we have a breakaway that treats us like a product. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
we have a lot to look at our own species. Maybe we're the ones. I'm not saying we're wicked, but
Yeah.
we
Oh
need to.
yeah. I totally agree, James. And a lot of people, I've had this conversation with like two or three different people lately, is that we generalize species based upon appearances without actually recognizing that wow, there's actually a lot of species. And I think as people who are into this sort of research, is it's imperative that we work really hard to be as accurate as we can with who it is we're talking about.
All right. What does your unit insignia look like? Maybe it's better you draw it out.
um
That one.
yeah, let me see if I can find it. This is the one I remember. I don't want that on Facebook. Oh, I'll show that. So that I saw that on a chest real quick, that flag, but the insignia, sorry, it's reverse. That's what I remember on my arm. So it was the eagle with a sword and a shield. And then I remember having brackets. I can't find anything other than the US military that use, I think they use that for like sergeants or something. But I remember that being on my arm. So whatever that was like the unit I was part of.
Oh wow, looks like it's some branch of the U.S. Army.
Yeah, it was definitely a the German eagle. But yeah, exactly, because I think cavalry. It's similar. Like the cavalry has the shield with that arm, like that angled bracket in the horse. But this one had a sword straight down.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's call it.
Okay. Yeah.
Space Cadet, we're not going to answer that. That's too weird, I think, in my opinion. Thank you so much, and let's go ahead. Everybody, be sure to go to my website, supersoldiertalk.com. You can go there and get a copy of my book, and it'll link you to my other website, Neological. I'm sorry, guys, you can't even see me. I should do better than that, but anyway, we'll try it again. Yeah, go to my website, Super Soldier Talk, and you can get a copy of my book and purchase a meditation cube to help you relax. Let's see here. Also, you could donate some money to my nonprofit, Healing Soul Survivors. I'd be thrilled to get a little extra funds because I'm putting on a special event. I haven't made an announcement yet, but could always use some support. And I appreciate you, Randolph. Thank you. I really, yeah. If you get another data dump, I want you to come back on here. Yeah,
Okay.
put
Yeah,
another.
we'll stay in touch, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I was so nervous. I'm still jittery, but yeah, everyone. It's almost Christmas time.
Yeah,
Give James some help out. He works hard for us.
yeah. Thank you, everybody. All right. Well, let's just call it. I think, yeah, go to subscribe and Rumble and all that. But yeah, well, I'll see you later. Goodbye, everybody, and have a wonderful day or night wherever you may be. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Please consider supporting Super Soldier Talk by purchasing your own Neo Meditation device. Your Neo Meditation device will help you reduce stress, integrate trauma, enhance intuition, enhance clairvoyance, and enhance creativity. Get yours now at www.neologicaltech.com.